Welcome to Narratives with Amir Rana, a program that focuses on the Pakistan's internal and regional security challenges. My name is Amir Rana, the host of the show, and every day I try to unpack the stories, conflicts, the tactics and the strategies that matters bringing the peace and harmony in the society. From today, I'm initiating a program that will largely focus on the security developments about the changing tactics of the terrorist organizations operating in parts of Pakistan and what kind of the weapons, the tools they are using, and how the state's security operators are responding to them or developing the counter responses accordingly. Though today is March 19th, and we still got the 2 weeks left in completion of the first quarter of the year. But even in 2.5 months, the Pakistan has witnessed a little surge in terrorist attacks. Though the number of the terrorist attacks are almost the similar if we compare with the last quarter, but the fatalities has been increased 73%. And of course, the one of the major factor which had contributed the increase in the fatalities was the Jafar Express train hijack, in which the hostage and the terrorists both faced huge casualties. So I'll try to bring you the picture of this 2.5 month, that which group was most active and in which part, and they had contributed increasing the insecurity in the regions. Let's have a look. The banned Tehrik-e-Taliban and affiliated groups such as Lashkar-e-Islam and Hafiz-ul Bahadur and other local Taliban faction conducted most of the attacks beside Islamic State Khorasan, which carried out 4 attacks in the quarter under review. And in Balochistan, the Balochistan Liberation Army and Balochistan Liberation Front were involved in most of the recorded attacks during that time. Surprisingly, the Sindhu Desh Liberation Army, which had disappeared from the scenes during last few months, had made an attack and in Sindh. And I think this was one of the important development in my view, because in a BRAS meeting, BRAS is the terrorist, Bloch Terrorist Organization Alliance, in which the Sindhu Desh Liberation Army also had participated. And after that meeting, so this organization has registered itself with one terrorist attack. So this is not about the attacks and the groups, but this is also very important that what kind of the tactics and the weapons these organizations use during their terrorist campaigns. So if you look at the table, so you will see that the TTP has managed 51 attacks, and most of the attacks is carried out was in KP province, while it also has carried out 5 attacks in Balochistan. It may surprise that why the TTP is increasing its footprints in Balochistan. We will discuss this factor in the later part of the program. And Hafiz-ul Bahadur is proved to be a little group which managed 9 terrorist attacks, which caused the large casualties, and mainly this group is operating in Bannu districts of KP province. As I mentioned, the Islamic State also has carried out the four terrorist attacks, but most importantly, the Baloch Liberation Army, it had carried out 39 attacks, though the number is less than the attacks being managed by the TTP, but the BLA somehow conducted the more lethal terrorist attacks in recent history of Pakistan with a hijack of the Jafar Express train. And after the BLA, the Balochistan Liberation Front, another lethal Baloch insurgents group, it also had carried out 16 terrorist attacks. And rather, there's a few other names we can count in Balochistan, in KP province, but they are not as significant as these five or six groups had contributed on the security landscape of the country. And we can divide these organizations. Right now, the Pakistan is facing the two type of the security challenges. One is posed by the religiously motivated terrorist groups, and other is sub-nationalist nationalist insurgents groups. And you had seen in the last slide that somehow they are if we compare, they are managing the equal level of the attacks if we combine the overall strengths of these groups. And this is very interesting that the religiously motivated groups, and especially the TTP, is using the more modern and more broad range of the weapons in its tactics. But in comparison, Baloch Liberation Army, it may be relying on the weapons usually the insurgents group use, but in terms of the strategies and the tactics, is basically modernizing itself or inventing applying the new tactics in terrorism in Balochistan. So this is the very interesting comparison that one group is basically trying to excel in bringing the new weapons in their terrorist attacks, and other inventing new tactics and the strategies. And why this is happening? Maybe the one reason is that the TTP has access to more weapons, the weapons the NATO forces had left in Afghanistan. They have access to these weapons. And we know that who is providing them these weapons. And the snipers, this is the only terrorist groups which is using in its terrorist attacks. Let's see this slide. So it will show you that how the terrorist tactics and the weapons they are using. Out of 152 terrorist attacks, so in most of the attacks, the terrorists applied the ambushes, suicide attacks, IEDs. Of course, this is one of the very favorite weapon of the terrorist, and very easy uh, to use it and to damage the security forces or the civilians. And blocking highways, which is of course the tactic the Baloch insurgents are using, the hijacking, sniper strikes. Of course, this is related to TTP. Suicide missions. Even the Gul Bahadur is start using it, the suicide mission, more effectively as he did in the March 5th attack on Bannu Kent. And we know that you might have seen in other countries as well that the vehicle turns ID is often used by, it's a favorite uh, tool of the terrorist organization all across the world. So this, and if you look at that, both the TTP and the BLA, they also use the gun and bomb attacks. So the gun and battle attack, this is the tactic mostly used by the Islamist militant in Syria and Iraq, and they had mastered in using it. And this is the one of the technique which is Al Qaeda get credits of. But now the TTP, Gul Bahadur, and BLA, they are using it more frequently in their attacks in Pakistan. And in last 2.5 months, they had used this tactic 4 times. And of course, this is not a small number. Hand grenade, of course, this is another tactic the most of the terrorist organization use. Uh, but if we look at the targets, of course, most of my audience will be interested to know that the who are the major targets of these attacks. The reason that most often is confused is that terrorists have propaganda that they usually target the non the security forces and avoid to target the non-combatant or the civilians. But this data will show you that they hardly discriminate between the military and civilian targets. For example, if you look at the terrorists target the one time they target the development project. Who works on the development projects? And the railway tracks, might you can see the this figure and the number in the context of the recent attack on Jafar Express, that even before this attack, the insurgents already had used this tactic more than 17 times. And if we look at, they also target the pro-government tribal leaders. They target polio workers, which are they are simply the civilians. And they killed the 5 spies, and to whom they declare that they are spies, to whom to they can tag anyone to whom they want. Those disagree with the TTP, with the BLA, or any other terrorist organization are stops supporting them. So they tag them as this is not loyal to us. He may be compromised and may be working undercover for the state agencies. So in these incidents, we have seen the little search as well. The government officials, the worship places, worship places, and these are the religiously motivated terrorist groups. Those target religious places. And we know that Pakistan is facing the sectarian violence uh, as well. And during this time, the Shia community has been targeted once. This is uh, not about the Kuram conflict which is going on, is beyond the Kuram conflict, that there was one another incident being reported. Non-Baloch workers, the Punjabi laborer, those who travel to Balochistan or trying to go to Iran or in another region of regional countries, they often targeted by the Baloch insurgents, and they claim that these laborers were not the civilian target. How come? And we know the people, the families, their loved one killed in these terrorist attacks. and they were all civilians, and they were belonging to the low income group. But so-called terrorists say that they have no strategy to target the civilians. So this is the comparison of the their tactic and strategies. But in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, uh, these terrorist organization launched 71 attacks on law enforcement agencies. Five attacks targeted civilians. Three attacks against political leaders, workers, while two attacks each were directed at state symbols, educational institution, and pro-government tribesmen and Balochistan. 29 attacks were directed at law enforcement agencies, while seven targeted non-Baloch workers and individuals. We are talking about the number of attacks, not the casualties. Six attacks were targeted at developmental projects, companies. Five attacks hit alleged spies, while government offices, hospitals faced three attacks. Let's discuss the variation in the tactics and the targets of these organizations. You may see on the screen that the Baloch insurgents group have increasingly focused on siege, hijacking, and ransacking buses and trains. They primarily target law enforcement agencies and security forces using firing, roadside ID blast, and rocket attacks to attack convoys. While religiously inspired terrorists, particularly TTP, have acquired advanced weapons including snipers, missiles, and mortars. And this is very important to note that which areas are right now the more or the most affected by terrorist activities or by terrorist attacks. And of course, in KP province, this is the Bannu district where the Kari Gul Bahadur is active, South and North Waziristan, then DI Khan. Though the terrorists manage few attacks in other tribal districts and in the suburb of Peshawar and in Balochistan, the Keech districts, Khuzda, they remain the major hotspot of the terrorist activities. And you may be surprised that despite launching the massive attacks in Makran region, Kalat, and Khuzda, the BLA is encroaching into the central part of Balochistan and in the regions which were traditionally belonged to the tribal insurgents back in uh, 2010 and to 2014 and 15, which were somehow their networks were dismantled by the Pakistan security forces successfully, and the BLA and its affiliated groups once again are trying to be recapture this territory. And most of the attacks on the power pylon and the railway tracks being managed in this area. And we are also witnessing that the BLA is also in going into the areas which not traditionally belong to them, like the Barkhan districts, which share border with Punjab. It was less affected by the militancy even during when the insurgency was on its peak in Dera Bukti and Kohlum. But now the terrorists encroaching in these areas as well. And they're also penetrating in the Pashtun dominated districts like Harnai, where the very small, tiny Baloch populations lives. And they are increasingly managing. That means the radicalism process within the Baloch youth is spreading. And Dera Bukti and Kohlu, Lahiri is a districts where the less known group, the Baloch Republican Guard, mainly operates. So this is the security situation is changing fast. And what the state is need to do is to look into their changing tactic and the targets and the strategies and to develop their counter responses accordingly. And though we had seen that the security forces had launched very effective uh, operations against these terrorists in Balochistan, uh, the security forces launched the two major intelligence-based operations while in KP 39. And of course, these operations had damaged the terrorist groups, but their narrative, the strength of narrative, and the source of supply and financial supplies are still intact. So this was just a brief review of the Pakistan's security landscape and what kind of the development we had witnessed during that time. So I'll try my best to come up with the more fresh perspective with the stat with evidence at least once a week. And tomorrow we are going to discuss another major development happen on Pakistan-Afghanistan border, reopening of the Torkham border. We will have one expert to explore the dynamics of the border security between Afghanistan and Pakistan and how it's impact the trade, the people's movements, and how is somehow affecting the bilateral relation of Afghanistan and Pakistan. So thank you very much for watching uh, today program. We will come back to you tomorrow with new fresh perspective and narratives. Thank you very much.